Good morning.
Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Bennett. Thank you very much. As Bennett just said, my name is Jennifer Mazzola, and if I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, I'm so glad that you would spend a little bit of your week with us. If you've been here for any length of time, you might have heard me share before. And if you've heard me share, I sometimes mention that I'm not from Texas. I know that, okay, you're still here, good. So I know I have a southern accent, but I'm actually from Tennessee. My parents moved from Huntsville, Alabama, right before I was born to right outside Nashville. And I am a born and raised Tennessean. Anybody else from Tennessee? Okay, I had one person in the first service. Wow. Well, here's the thing. I've lived in Tennessee my whole life. I moved away for college for about 4 years. And it wasn't until 5 years ago that I actually started to develop state pride. It wasn't that I was anti-Tennessee. I've always appreciated where I'm from, but I didn't realize until I moved here that you need state pride, right? And actually, crossing from Arkansas into Texas, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced this, but you drown in the Texas state pride as soon as you cross the border. And that's who's from Texas. Well, okay, well, deal with me for the next 20 minutes or so. I just want to start with, I love Texas. And the irony of this is now I feel the sense of urgency to develop Tennessee state pride. I never owned anything that was Tennessee until I moved here. And now every time I go home to visit, I'm getting something with the flag, the logo, or a Nashville t-shirt, which more of you have Nashville t-shirts than even I do. Because I feel like I have to compensate for a lack of state pride for so long because Texas has so much state pride. I also feel like possibly the Lord has brought me to Texas just to let Texas know it's not the only state. Just need to inform you. But I love both states. We're just going to do a little bit of comparison real quick, just in case you aren't familiar with Tennessee. Let's start with something we can be on the same page. Both states start with T. That's great, right? So until you go to fill out an online form, and you go to put your address in, and you put that T in, and it auto-populates, not Texas. I feel like every time that happens, it's my state saying, hey. And then you have to go in, and you guys have to go in read it. See, people are like, yes, I'm so annoyed by that. Another thing that's different is, for us in Tennessee, we have barbecue. I know there's a myth that only Texas has barbecue. But for us in Tennessee, barbecue is just a style of cooking. So you can have, yes, Memphis has ribs, and we're kind of a pulled pork state probably, but also all sorts of other things. But in Texas, for some reason, it just seems like you just have brisket. It's the only way you understand barbecue. And the other things like turkey or maybe sausage are like an afterthought or a side to accompany the brisket. Now, granted, Austin is the live music capital of the world, like the planet, the globe. Nashville, just a little more humble. We're just Music City, USA. We just also happen to be where the country stars live, and we house the Country Music Hall of Fame. But just for comparison, this is 6th Street on a Friday night. Check it out. This is downtown Nashville on a Tuesday. And I will be honest, this is mainly bachelorette parties. And I have heard they're going to probably start calling it the Bachelorette Party USA, not the, Country Music USA. You guys have the Lone Star, right? Raise your hand if you've got anything Lone Star in your house, in your yard, somewhere. Yeah, it's like a tattoo possibly. Okay, yeah. It's like a big deal for you guys, which is cool. It's really awesome. My kids really had to adjust when we were saying the Texas pledge too. That was an adjustment for us when we moved. Like, Mom, we have to say 2 pledges. But here in Tennessee, we got 3 stars. We're the tri-star state. And the way I understand it is that's like Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So when we talk about God's country, meh, really? The other thing I will say is that I went to history class and I learned all about Texas. We actually talk about you guys a ton in Tennessee. And I learned all about the Alamo, and I can remember being I'm going to get to go see the Alamo. And I went, and it was a little smaller than I expected. And it was also smack dab in the middle of a city, which kind of threw me off for a second. But I was so excited, and as we toured the Alamo, I got to see all the heroes of the Alamo, and one of them was this guy. Anybody recognize him? Anybody? Davy Crockett? Right, you got it. You're welcome. He's from Tennessee. And it didn't work out so well when he moved to Texas. We're in the middle of a series called More. And a couple of weeks ago, Jordan did a great job of kind of asking us or having us consider a problem, right? Like that maybe the pursuit of more, for the sake of more, actually has us end up with less. And last week, Jeremy did an awesome job to challenge us, and it was really challenging for me to hear. What if we intentionally simplified our calendars, simplified our stuff so that we could let more of God in? And we felt like we couldn't do this series without talking about what I think often fuels our desire for more, and that's comparisons. And not just Texas, Tennessee comparisons, like the comparisons that we do every day. We used this passage a couple of weeks ago. It's a question that Jesus asked, but it kind of is framed also in a warning. It goes like this: for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? What if you get all the stuff you're going after? What if you do all the things you think you've got to accomplish and you fill up your calendar with as much as possible and you forfeit what you're actually supposed to be pursuing? And in relationship to comparisons, what if Jesus' statement was felt a little more this way? What if you compare yourself to everyone in the world? Everyone you see, you're measuring yourself against. And you miss who you're actually supposed to be. What if who you're desiring to be, based off your comparison, is actually not as great compared to who you're meant to be? What if that thing that you see that guy's got that dream job, and that's supposed to be my dream job, but it actually has you miss working well where you actually are, or you start pursuing a path that's actually not well intended for you? I've shared before that for the first 10 years of my marriage, I purchased a journal and put it in my husband's Christmas stocking for 10 years. Not once did he journal. But if I'm honest, what I was doing was looking at all those journaling husbands. There's actually a lot more of you than you realize. And I was like, I guess that's what husbands are supposed to do, right? Like good Christian husbands journal. And for 10 years, guys, I did this. But I missed actually paying attention to how my husband actually connects to God because I was comparing. We compare all the time. And psychologists are aware of this, and they actually have described a couple of syndromes. They call it social comparison theory or compare and despair syndrome. And they know that it's robbing us of life, robbing us of joy, and we're missing things because of comparisons. We compare everything. We compare our ages, we compare our bodies, we compare our invitations. Did I get invited to the thing or did they? Our social lives, what are we seeing on social media? Our past self, where I should have been by now or who I was back then. We compare homes, churches, how we do music, how we build buildings. We compare finances, accolades and awards. We compare our children, our friendships. There is no lack of comparison. Several years ago, I was in a super comfortable elementary school gymnasium waiting for what was going to be an amazing elementary choir performance, no doubt. And we got there because you had to get there hours early because these parents are serious about seeing that third grader. And so we were there, and I was just kind of like sitting and waiting and letting my mind wander, I guess. And my husband, Sal, leans over to me and he goes, "Are you doing the mom petition?" "What? Are you doing the mom petition? Are you looking at other moms and women and comparing yourself?" Absolutely, I was. I absolutely was. In fact, I had done it so much, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was just so easy for me to look and compare. I thought, I wonder how many kids she has and she can still look like that. I wonder how much those shoes were. She probably spends all day at the gym. Well, I wish I could, but I have to work. And I'm measuring and evaluating. And while I was younger, it had a lot to do with body stuff for sure. But later, I would just also compare intelligence. Am I as smart as they are? Am I able to accomplish what they're able to accomplish? Do my kids behave as well as their kids behave? Is my house as clean as their house is? Not too long ago, we were in a neighborhood party, a neighborhood gathering. We're sitting in the backyard, and this house was beautiful. The backyard was even more beautiful. And we're sitting and listening to all of our neighbors, just catching up with everybody, and they're all sharing about all the trips that they went on and all the house projects they're doing. And I would love to say that I was present, but I was sitting there thinking, I need to travel more because my travel doesn't compare to their travel. And God, I wish we had that kind of a budget for those house projects. And now I'm comparing even more things. There is absolutely no shortage of comparisons. We do not lack in the things that we can compare ourselves with. The list goes on and on. We compare bank accounts. We compare our finances, our house projects, all the things. A few years ago, or maybe like 2 years ago, I was sitting in a room and another pastor was sharing, and he actually gave he attributed a quote to me that wasn't me. He attributed, "Comparison is the thief of joy," to me rather than President Theodore Roosevelt. I'm not going to turn around because I saw it in first service and I don't want to see it again. I thought, okay, well, I have like this pet peeve with like an Abraham Lincoln quote. Lincoln is often given this quote, right? "A house divided against itself cannot stand." If you go to the Hall of Presidents at Walt Disney, this is what Lincoln says, but it was actually Jesus. And so I feel like if Lincoln is misquoted, I can be misquoted too. That's good company. But I think like Lincoln, borrowing from Jesus, Roosevelt was borrowing from a proverb that goes like this. Proverb says this: "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." Comparisons rob us of life. I wasn't present at my kids' performance, and I wasn't present in my neighborhood party the other day. Comparison robs our relationships. I have had friendships and work relationships essentially just ruined because of jealousy. Comparison keeps us from a heart at peace. I have added shame and guilt and honestly just totally destructive self-talk to my inner talk from comparisons. Why do we compare? Because it almost seems like it's natural. It almost seems like we can't not compare. And I'm going to say a statement, let me unpack it, but I kind of think this is God's fault. Because kind of like right out of the gate, he's created comparisons. I mean, right out of the gate, we get this tree or that tree, you pick. And I think that the reason that he does that is because comparison is a part of choice. You can't make a choice without comparing. Even if it's a simple, like seeming, you don't have to really think about it, you're still making a comparison and making a choice. And choice is vital to free will, and free will is essential to God. It's a big deal to God. So our brains are wired in a way that we are constantly evaluating, measuring, and comparing. But comparisons, like most things in our life, right, have the potential to produce healthy things or very unhealthy things. And so when we try and stop comparing, when we try and say, okay, I'm just not going to compare myself anymore, there's a reason that it's tough to do, because we're naturally made to do it. And on one side, comparison can do this. It can produce things like respect, admiration, honor, esteem, appreciation, motivation. I can see a direction that someone is going in, and I can be like, I want to go after that. I can look at what they've accomplished. Man, if they made it through school, if they got that degree, I think I can do it too. There's a healthy side to this. Man, look at how far they ran. For those of you that like choose to run when nothing is chasing you, that's fine. Whatever. Some people are into that. But like for some people, that's motivation. Look, they ran 11 miles. Why? But that's fine. For other people, that's motivating. But on the other side, and it's a really thin line, and I honestly think this is more common, it creates envy, jealousy, spite, bitterness, resentment, and judgment. I think this is where we live more often when we compare. And this is what I call bad math. We do bad math. We see what someone has, how they look, what their family seems to be like, what their career path seems to be like. And then we measure them, we evaluate them, and we're doing it wrong because we're not really doing God's equation, we're doing our own equation. Now, who in here is actually good at math? Like literally a good at math person. You don't have to be shy. We had one middle schooler in here earlier that was good at math. So yeah, some of you are math people, right? That's great. You're just like a super good at math person. I am not you, and I have compared myself to you for a very long time, but I just want to go ahead and set up like follow my equation. It's not going to be like a literal math equation. And I'm just sharing that because those of you that are good at math are like, well, that's not mathematically correct. I get it. Just walk it out with me. Part of the reason that I love the Bible is it's this collection of 66 books that does not hide the reality of humanity. It is on full display. You get to see the great stuff and the not so great stuff. And there is tons of bad math in the Bible. Just a few examples. Mary and Martha, they compare each other's work ethic and end up disputing about that. Joseph and his brothers compare which one does dad love more. Sarah and Hagar compare their social status and then compare their children. And Cain and Abel compare God's favor to the point of murder. The disciples who had the opportunity to actually walk and do life with Jesus still live in the land of bad math. We see in Luke, it says this, a dispute arose among them, speaking of the disciples, as to who is the greatest. And this is by far not the only time they have this argument with each other. Let's read another passage from Mark. When he was in the house, this is Jesus, Jesus asked, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because they've been arguing about who's the greatest. They were embarrassed to have been comparing themselves that way. But I think we all do this. And when we compare ourselves, it's not like we're like showing up into a space as our full and real self. That's not what we're doing. When we compare, we're showing up, we're looking around, we're surveying everything, we're measuring others, and then we're measuring ourselves. For the disciples, it looked like this: Jesus plus Peter, like they have a conversation, equals Matthew is terrible. And it doesn't make any sense when we see it that way, but I think we're doing this all the time. So what causes this? I think there's one real central thing that causes it is one, comparisons are rarely formed in reality. Right? We actually rarely know what's going on in someone's life or what has gone on in their life. And yet we're already measuring and comparing. We don't know how much debt someone could be in, or maybe if an investment paid off. We don't know someone's journey or story. I can remember at the last church that I served, at some point someone came to my husband and I, and they just said, "I need to confess to you guys that he had made an entire list of assumptions about my husband. He took a snapshot of what he saw in my husband's life, in his career, and in his accomplishments, and he went ahead and decided exactly everything my husband must have been through or not been through in his growing up. And every single point he had made was incorrect. He didn't have any clue, and he had made all these assumptions. I have had people assume that they know how I vote, that they know what I think about this or that they know what I believe, that they know what my marriage is like, or that they know what my kids are like, or what I've been through, and they've never even had a conversation with me. We do this all the time though, right? We just see someone or we see something and we're measuring it, and we're made to in some ways, but our equations are off. When we compare and then we assume, we end up judging. And when we judge, we're ascribing value to others and to ourselves that could be way off. We could have the equation way wrong. Things like this: she plus looks good equals I'm old and fat. Why does that work that way? Or she plus looks good equals she must have gotten this, and this done. Or he plus acknowledgement at work equals I'm not working hard enough, I've got to work harder. Or maybe he plus acknowledgement at work looks more like this. We didn't keep the sound on. If you know, you know. This is the best bad math example from a Christmas movie ever. Right? It means, oh, well, because he's getting praised at work or he gets a promotion, then he must be a kiss-up or a try-hard, right? And we do this communally too. We do this in relationships. They minus an invitation for me equals I'm not enough. I didn't get invited, therefore I'm not enough. Couldn't be anything else. Or they minus an invitation for me means that they're rude or something's wrong with them. We do bad math all the time. So how do we correct this? What do we do to actually fix our bad math? Well, for starters, you need to get to know you. Like really get to know you. Psalm 139 says, I praise you for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. How full well do you know you? I think most of us end up either just emphasizing our strengths, and so we just try and shove our weaknesses under the rug, or others just live thinking about all the things that we do wrong and we can't do and how we're not good enough, and don't actually get intentional about leaning into our strengths and our gifts. And God is not an either-or God. He says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. You are uniquely knit together and shaped in a specific way that brings something to the world. But when you compare, you're trying to be someone else. I had a young woman say to me once, when will I stop trying to be someone else? And my response was, when you actually know who you are, who you were made to be, and who made you, you will find more in discovering being content with who you are and are not made to be. It's not an either or, it's both. Paul is addressing this with a group of people in Corinth, and he says it this way. When they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves to one another, they're without understanding. When you compare yourself to others, you aren't seeing clearly. You're going to miss what's actually in front of your face. When you see what all they have, you'll forget to be thankful for what you have. When you see who they are, you're going to chase gifts that might not even actually belong to you, and you're denying your talents and strengths. You're without understanding. Way before Paul, Isaiah says it in a little more of a poetic fashion. He says this, "What sorrow awaits those who argue with their creator? Does a clay pot argue with its maker? Does the clay dispute with the one who shapes it, saying, 'Stop, you're doing it wrong. I don't look like that clay pot over there. I don't look like that cup. I don't look like that bowl. I don't function like that over there.'" And you're always looking for the place that you've got to get to, instead of paying attention to what God is doing right now, how he is shaping and knitting you right now. And when we do that in comparison, it's like exclaiming to the potter, "God, what you have done is not good enough, and I don't want any part of what you've made. I just want to look over here and chase after that." I want to encourage you, really get to know you. Like, get to know yourself full well, what you bring to the table, how you show up when you come to a room. And there's all sorts of ways to get to know yourself. There's a million personality tools and assessments, and these are all great. These are all wonderful. They can tell you about your strengths, your weaknesses. They can tell you what your wounds are doing to you, how you show up in a room, why you have an autopilot response like that. These are all good. I would encourage you, dive into some of these if you've never explored them. Also, get a mirror. First, a figurative mirror, like someone who can reflect for you how you're actually showing up. I know a question that we often encourage you to ask here at Northpoint is, what's it like on the other side of you? Get someone who will tell you, but also make sure you've got someone that will tell you your potential, how they see you and what you do bring when you're actually your full self. But second, and this is kind of a little more of a side note, because I think that a lot of our comparisons end up being physical. And while I know that often we talk to students about that kind of stuff, about body image, and I've got a great group of small group girls, and we kind of want to make sure they always are thinking about that stuff, I'm not sure we grow out of that. I think we still do bad math, no matter how old we are with our physical stuff. So when you get in front of a mirror, you automatically default to your faults. Oh, I look older today. It's my aging. I have less hair today. And this is also bad math. Me plus cellulite. Thank you for laughing at that. The first service didn't laugh. I was like, guys, I know it's serious, but it can't be that serious. We have to laugh about it. Me plus cellulite equals my husband won't desire me. Or me plus or minus hair equals how that makes you feel about how you show up in a room. We still are doing this from time to time with our physical appearance. So get a figurative mirror and a literal mirror and spend time realizing, yeah, you're going to gravitate toward your faults on both sides, right? But can you see the features that you do love? The strengths that you do bring into a space? Do you know yourself full well? The other thing I think that helps us with comparisons is lean into healthy comparisons. Now, because again, I think when you're going to hear someone talk about comparisons, you make an assumption that we're going to tell you to stop comparing. I'm not sure you can. I think we're made in a way that measures and evaluates constantly. But when you find healthy comparisons, lean into them. Author and pastor Andy Stanley, when him and his wife Sandra were walking toward parenthood, he was working in student ministry. And he says this about something they did intentionally I want to share with you. It says, when we saw parents who had healthy relationships with their teenagers, they compared. We weren't shy about inviting them to lunch. We said, we want to know your game plan because we've compared it to other game plans. We say we want your map because we've compared it to other maps. We want to know how you did it. There is such a thing as good math, right? There is a way when you see someone and you admire them and respect them, ask them, how did you get here? Run after it, chase it, learn from it. Good math is also in the Bible. I love just a couple of quick equations that we see in Scripture. This is John the Baptist when he's been asked about Jesus, like, how do you compare to Jesus, your cousin, which the pressure I can't even fathom. But He says, he must become greater and I must become less. Paul gives another equation when he's challenged and said, well, what is your preaching like compared to Apollos' preaching? And he says this, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. Meaning me plus Apollos equals God's going to handle it anyway. There is such a thing as good math. When you find healthy comparisons and you see distinctions and they motivate you, get coaches, get mentors. You know, one of the things I love about Northpoint is there's actually a structured mentoring program for women. Very few churches have that. It is actually a space where you can say, I see you're just a little further down the road than me, and I want to learn, and I want to grow, and I want to be a part of that. So get to know you and get to know yourself full well. And then find healthy comparisons and lean into them, learn from them. And then lastly, and there's so many things we could talk about, but just for this morning, invite God into your math. I know that sounds like an oversimplification, like, okay, Jen's just going to tell us to pray about our comparisons, but I mean, kind of, yes. I mean, invite in, have a conversation with God about your math. When you find yourself looking at someone or judging someone or making assumptions about someone and how they do or don't do like you do, or they don't parent like you do, or their marriage doesn't look like yours, or their beliefs aren't exactly like, stop for a second and ask, am I doing bad math? When you find yourself frustrated with yourself because you're not as far along as you thought you should be, or you don't look like you thought you should look, or life doesn't look like you thought it should look, stop for a second and invite God in. Is this bad math? Can you help me see this equation clearly? There was a particular season of life many years ago where I just was a little overwhelmed. I was working, had 2 small kids. I was trying to be a good wife. I was trying to show up and be a good daughter to my adult parents. I wanted to be a good friend, and I was working. I was all these things, and I just felt like everybody else seemed to be able to hold it together, but I could not. I was looking at all these other like super moms, and I was like, look, they're doing all the things, and everything looks like it's on Pinterest, and I can't seem to accomplish that. Look at their family pictures. Everyone is smiling. I can't get one of those for the life of me. I can't get where everybody's actually looking at the camera. I don't know the magic that people do to get that. Everything felt like I wasn't measuring up. And I was at a conference for church staff members, and there was a point in which that we had some time to sing together, just like we kind of did this morning, right? And there was a particular worship song that we were singing, and the chorus goes like this. It says, so here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely. You're altogether worthy. You're altogether wonderful to me. And you know, we were in a room full of Christians, so you know we're going to sing that 20 times. And as we're singing it on repeat, and all I'm thinking, and I'm distracted by all the comparisons that are running through my head, we start singing the chorus again. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. And I felt for a second like God just paused me and said, do not sing this next part. I want to sing that over you. Let me sing that to you. Let me sing that about you. And I sat and I heard the whole room sing, you're altogether lovely. You're altogether worthy. You're altogether wonderful to me. And trust me, that is not to say there's not plenty of times that God has told me that that wasn't very worthy and that wasn't very lovely and that wasn't very wonderful. But for that moment, he wanted me to stop for a second. Stop comparing myself for a second and let him share how he saw me for a moment. When's the last time you invited God into your math about how you see you? When was the last time you sat for just a second and thought, oh, maybe I'm more lovely than I feel? Maybe I'm more capable than I feel. Maybe I'm actually more successful than I feel. Maybe I'm actually smarter than I feel. But if we don't pause long enough to invite God into our math, we will use comparisons and we will be doing bad math every time, and it will leave us feeling like we have so much less in life when we actually already have access to so much more. So anywhere in your life that you feel like you have less, where you don't feel like you're where you're supposed to be measured by somebody else, Is it comparison that's making you feel that? Or is it really what God is trying to tell you? Maybe he is trying to push you, but you have to invite him into those conversations. You have to invite God in. You need to lean into healthy comparisons. You need to find mentors and guides and coaches and people that will push you in a right direction. And you need to get to know you, because you are made in a way that only you can show up as. No one else can bring to the table what you bring. But if you don't know what you bring and you don't know who brought you there, you will miss it and you will be doing bad math, and you will feel like life offers you less when there is so much more to offer. The proverb says, a heart of peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. We start with comparison. We risk rotting the bones, right? We miss a heart at peace. Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you that you've made us in a way that we're looking and measuring and evaluating so that we get clarity and understanding, but we confess that oftentimes we don't measure and evaluate to get clarity and to hear from you. We measure and evaluate in comparison, which means then we assume and then we judge. We judge ourselves and we judge others, and we miss relationship and health and vibrant relationship with you. We miss so much more because we narrow our scope and we end up looking at less when we start with comparison. So we invite you into our math. We want good math. Help us to know ourselves full well, to lean into healthy relationships, and to invite you into every equation that we use. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much, guys. We'll be back next week for part 4.